Sorry about that. So it's just, yes. So we'll be closing this opening here because it's go to your trachea and your respiratory system. So if the food enter here, you can choke and die. So the epiglottis is very, very important. So whenever you swallow the food, just make sure that the food go through the esophagus here, not to go inside the trachea. That's why this valve or this epiglottis right here, just close this opening so the food does not go into the respiration pathway. This is the larynx, of course, and this is the trachea. And if you wanna think about the both lungs as the tree but upside down. So this will be the main branch of the tree. This main branch is going to give you smaller branches. We're gonna see this next slide. It's gonna be more obvious. So it's like upside down. You have actually two lungs, the left lung and the right lung. As you can see, the right lung is bigger a little bit and has 3 parts, but the left lung has a little bit of indentation here. This is considered as a seat for the heart. So the heart can relax or sit right here and has only 2 parts, as you can see right here. Okay, so you have the main trachea is going to give you left and right. So it's going to give you first left main bronchs, and then it's going to give you lower bronchs, and then the segmental bronchs. At the end of the segmental bronchs, you're going to find bronchioles, and you're going to find the alveoli where actually the gas exchange happen. And of course, this is a diagram, very important for breathing as well. So this will be the right lung, and this will be the pleural cavity, and this will be the visceral pleura. So you have the right and left lung. Right lung, as you can see, is a little bit bigger than the left lung and have 3 parts. 1, 2, 3. This is have only 2 parts and has a little bit of indentation here for the considered as a seat for the heart to relax or to. This is actually the some of the cartilage that you need to know. Of course, this is the epiglottis we talked about, very important. If this work fine, so nothing can happen to you while you're eating. This actually close the passageway through the trachea. Whenever you swallow the food, this makes sure that will close the opening of the trachea so the food can pass through the esophagus and go to the stomach. Anterior view and posterior view. Epiglottis, of course, the famous hyoid bone right here. You remember this is the only bone that's not attached to another bone, hyoid bone. And underneath you're gonna find the thyroid ligament, and under the thyroid ligament you're gonna find the thyroid cartilage, and underneath the thyroid cartilage you're gonna find the cricothyroid ligament and cricoid cartilage and cricotracheal ligaments. And of course, at the bottom, I'm going to find the trachea right here. This is a C-shaped tracheal cartilage, and this will be the esophagus, this location of the esophagus. It's not shown. The esophagus, when the food passed through the esophagus. This is lateral view. So anterior, posterior view, and this is the lateral view to show you the epiglottis, hyoid bone, and this will be the epiglottic cartilage. This is of course some fat pad here, right here, and you have the thyroid ligament, and have the thyroid cartilage. This will be the cuneiform cartilage, and this will be the corniculate cartilage, and this is the vestibular fold, and this is the vocal cord, of course, and this is what makes you actually talk, and this is what produces the sounds. And this will be the arytenoid cartilage, side view again, and this is the cricoid, and this is the tracheal cartilage. This is show you the two main branch of the respiratory system, or of your trachea and the bronchs. You have the main one. This would be the larynx right here, and this is of course the thyroid cartilage. This is the cricoid cartilage. This is the trachea, and this is the two main bronchi, right and left. As we speak earlier, this right and left branches is going to give you the lobar bronchs, and it's gonna give you a lobar branch. Is gonna give you some segmental branches as well. But the lung itself, as you can see here, this is right lung. Right lung has three parts: 1, 2, and 3. You have superior, middle, and inferior. But while the left lung, as you can see, this is the little indentation for the place for the heart to sleep against this part or to sit against this part. This will be the cardiac impression, of course. And this has only two parts. You have superior and you have inferior. You don't have middle part like the right. So the left, little smaller than the right, a little bit. And of course, this will be the horizontal fissure. Fissure will be the crack or the partition that actually separate the two parts or the two loop. And this is will be the segmental bronchs. This will be the middle loop of the right lung. This is of course will be the lobar bronchs, and this will be the oblique fissure that give you the third compartment or the third loop of the lung, which is the inferior loop of the right lung. And of course, this will be the base of the lung. We call this hilum of the lung region. Hilum, you consider hilum, you're gonna see this word a lot, hilum. Even when you study the kidney, if this is a kidney, you're gonna find this part called the hilum of the kidney. If you study as you study before, the immune system, you're gonna find the hilum again. So consider this hilum as the entrance or the part before the entrance, okay? So the hilum, this is the hilum of the lung. This is the superior lobe of the left lung, and this is the inferior lobe. Of course, you saw this slides or image several times before when you studied the tissue before. You remember this will be the lumen of the trachea. Lumen of the trachea meaning the air that you breathe will be passing through this lumen. Lumen would be like, get in touch with this lumen. So this is the most inner part, right? So, and this is part will be the ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Again, pseudostratified, that's mean it's fake, it's not stratified, it's only one layer but looks like multiple layer because of the location of the nucleus. So it's supposed to be simple, one row, but it looks like stratified, but it's not stratified, it's fake. Columnar, and the columnar epithelium mean that the cell looks like column, and epithelial type of epithelial tissues, of course. And underneath, you're gonna find the connective tissue, and you're gonna find the seromucous gland in submucosa that produces the mucus. And after that, you're gonna in the top of that, you're gonna find the hairline cartilage or the C-shaped of the tracheal ring. Looks like that, the hairline cartilage. Have a little eye like this. And we saw this, I think, this before. This is just the same thing, connective tissue, epithelium, epithelial cell, and you have the goblet cells right here, goblet cell that produce mucus too, and this will be the cilia that's actually prevent any dust or anything to get inside your respiratory. So it's always pushing the dust out by doing the coughing. When you cough like this, actually this cilia is pushing any dust away from your respiratory passageway. And this will be, of course, the lumen, the lumen, which is the most internal part that the air pass through the. And this beautiful image here, you have the bronchiole, and this will be the terminal bronchiole. Actually, when you find these respiratory bronchioles, where actually you have this grapes, looks like grapes, this will be the alveoli. This is the magic things that perform the gas exchange, where they actually carry oxygen and get rid of the CO2. So they take the oxygen from the arterioles and getting rid of CO2 that goes through the venols. This will be the alveoli. You see, it's a lot of alveoli that looks like grapes. And this is the alveolar duct. And this is actually, you have a lot of alveoli, that a lot of them, to the extent that they said that this can fill up to the tennis court of the alveoli, which is really amazing. And this is actually the real gas exchange happen right here. So if you have any problem with the alveoli, it's very dangerous. That's why the COVID was very, very bad, because it's attacked the alveoli. Histological slides for the alveoli. This will be the alveolar duct, and this will be the alveoli, and this will be the the bronchiole, and this will be the alveolar sac, and this is the lumen of a blood vessel. A beautiful alveoli again. You have the lumen of the capillary, and this is nuclei. These are the nuclei of a simple squamous epithelial cell, type 1 alveolar cells, and this will be the alveolus. Simple squamous, as you know, simple mean one layer, squamous like fried egg or flat epithelial tissue, and type 1 of alveolar cells. This slide show you the inspiration muscle and the forced expiration muscle. The inspiration muscle will be the sternocleidomastoid. Remember, sterno comes from sternum and clavicle and go to the mastoid process. And the scalenus, very important muscle for the inspiration as well. External intercostalis, pectoralis, and the pectoralis minor right here. And you have the internal, intercostalis, but the intercartilaginous part that close to the cartilage, because the internal intercostalis, interosseous part, which attached to the bone, this will be the muscle of the forced expiration. Okay, and of course muscle of forced expiration will be the rectus abdominis and the external oblique. This is just to show you the inspiration muscles and the forced expiration origin and insertion. Of course, diaphragm is very important, as you know, in respiration as well. External intercostalis, sternocleidomastoid, the scalenus and pectoralis minor, and the internal intercostalis, the intercartilaginous part. This is the muscle of inspiration. Muscle of forced expiration will be the internal intercostalis, but the interosseous part, the part attached to the bone, and the rectus abdominis and external oblique. We had this before about the origin and insertion, but I'm going to just read a couple of them as a reminder. So the internal intercostalis, the interosseous part, origin will be the superior border of the inferior rib, insertion will be the inferior border of the superior rib, And of course, the expiration action B depresses rib. This compresses thoracic cavity during forced expiration. Rectus abdominis, the origin will be the pubic crest and pubic symphysis, and the insertion will be the xiphoid process of sternum and costal cartilages of the ribs 5 and 7. Action again will be the compresses inferior ribs and abdominal contents, helping raise the diaphragm. This nice model here that we use at the lab. Unfortunately, we didn't meet at the lab yet because of the COVID, but this is how it looks like. Very, very nice model of your lungs and your respiration. You have the rubber stopper here and Y tube, and these two balloons represent both lungs. This will be the rubber balloons, and this of course clamp that cover the model, and this will be the rubber sheeting. If you wanna resemble, if you wanna just resemble exactly the respiration process, usually you pushing this down a little bit so you fill this with air, and you're gonna find this go bigger, and when you push it back, this will go back to the normal size. This is just to show you the model of the respiration. It's a lot of fun when you do it as at the lab. We didn't do it, of course. This is a spirometer that measuring the amount of air actually. So you put your mouth here and you blow the air, and this arm will be moving to measure how much air actually you blow inside the spirometer, and this is how you do it, as you can see. And measure this. We're gonna take example of this. We're gonna take example of this females, like the predicted vital capacities in millimeter for females. So let's say you have a female 16 age and the weight is 156 pounds. So her vital capacity is going to be 3,150. This is just an example. Let's say you take a female that's 26 years old and her weight, let's say 170. So her vital capacity will be 3,265. For male, the same thing. You can take this as example. So 18 years old and the weight, let's say 162 pounds. The vital capacity of this guy will be 4,145. This is just as to compare between a male and female for the vital capacity in millimeters. This one is very important. I just want you to pay attention. You remember the balloon we have in the previous slide. So if you have the balloon and you try to blow the balloon in the beginning, it's very difficult to blow the balloon in the beginning because you have to exert a lot of effort to blow the air inside the balloon. But once you blow the balloon a little bit, it's easy after that to blow it to the end, right? So this one in the bottom here, this part here, this is called residual volume. So this is usually this amount of air. It's always inside your lung all the time, inside the lung all the time, to make you breathe normally. So you don't have actually to exert this effort, like the same effort you exert when you start to blow the balloon at the beginning. So to make it easy, you usually have some residual air inside. So when you breathe normal. So this residual air will be this part, this gray area here. So your lung never gets rid of those amount of air called residual air. Okay. So when you breathe in, so if you try to breathe in and out now, this is called normal breathing. This is called the tidal volume. Okay. So you do a little bit of expiration, forced expiration a little bit, you go down a little bit, but you go back to tidal volume. Once I ask you once I ask you to perform forced inspiration, so take a deep breath, deep inhalation, you go up in this area, and then you go down to the tidal, to the normal breathing that you do all the time. Same thing, take another deep inhalation or inspiration, you do this, and then you go back to normal. And when I ask you to do forced expiration, you do like this, you go down to this area here, blue area, and then you go to the normal breathing that has no sound. We call it tidal volume. So this yellow area here, this is your normal breathing, called tidal volume. When you do a deep inspiration, you go to this area called inspiratory reserve volume. Use it. And when you go to deep expiration, use expiratory reserve volume. So you got it? So while you're listening to this video now, you breathing normally in the tidal volume. So if I ask you to take a deep breath, take deep inspiration, then you move to this area up, called inspiratory reserve volume, and then you go back to normal, no noise, no sound, nothing. Take another deep inspiration, you take it all the way, and then you go back to the tidal volume. And if I ask you to do forced expiration, you go down to this area called expiratory reserve volume. So what we learn from this? We learn from this area here called residual volume. It's always there all the time. When you're breathing normally, this will be your tidal volume. If you perform deep inspiration, so you're using the inspiratory reserve volume. When you perform forced expiration, you're using the you go to the expiratory reserve volume. Okay, so based on this, total lung capacity will include the residual volume here plus expiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume, right? Okay, and inspiratory capacity will be the inspiratory reserve volume here plus the tidal volume. Vital capacity of the lung will include expiratory. This is actually when you perform the exercise at the BIOPAC. You know how to use the BIOPAC now. You connect the wires to the computer, to the BIOPAC machine, and you follow the computer instruction. Anyway, this part here, as you can see, this part will be the normal breathing. You see this part, this is your normal breathing. Okay, now this part will be maximum inhale. So when you do maximum inhale, you go to the inspiratory reserve volume. Okay, and this part here will be recovery, and this part here will be the maximal exhale. See, maximum exhale. When you go down a little bit, this is maximal exhale, because you go into the expiratory reserve volume, and then when you go up, this is recovery. This is again your normal breathing, has no sound, which will be in this area called the tidal volume. This is actually your measurement when you perform the BIOPAC exercise. Tidal volume, again, TV. The average volume will be the resting subject normal breathing, when the subject actually resting, and his average normal breathing. His tidal volume will be approximately 500 milliliter. During exercise, if you ask the subject to perform some exercise or jumping up and down or something, or tidal volume can be more than 3 liter. So in case of resting, it's 500 milliliter, but in case of exercise, this tidal volume can reach up to 3 liters. Measured the volume would be greater than or equal to or less than. So usually it's in the rests can be equal to 500 milliliter or more, but in case of exercise, it's going to be more than 3 liter. Respiratory reserve volume, remember, when you take a deep breath, right? The average would be resting. The resting and respiratory reserve volume for young adult in males would be about 3,300 milliliter. For the females, it's 1,900 milliliter. Expiratory reserve volume, which is forced expiration. The resting expiratory reserve volume for young adult would be, for the male, would be approximately 1,000 milliliter. For female, would be approximately 700 milliliter. This is just to show you the regulation of the respiratory processes. You have actually receptors in the aorta. There is aortic body here measuring the amount of oxygen or the oxygen level in the blood, along with carotid bodies here, very close to the external carotid artery, which actually measure the amount of oxygen and amount of CO2 just in case. So if they drop or something, they usually the regulatory part or that regulate the breathing at the midbrain. So this green pathway, this will be the output from hypothalamus and the limbic system and higher brain centers. Of course, they collecting the sensation or sensory input from peripheral receptors. Part of this will be the glossopharyngeal nerve and the vagus nerve. Both actually give the centers here, the dorsal respiratory group and the ventral respiratory group in the midbrain. And the part here will be the pontine respiratory group and the pons. They usually give them the sensation about the amount of oxygen in the blood. So based on that, the hypothalamus probably sending some messages down to increase breathing, just in case if you need more oxygen, etc. Of course, you have the spinal cord integrating center here that actually contact or communicate with forced expiration and expiration muscle. And this is how actually the regulation of the breathing happens. And this is a control center in the midbrain of the breathing. And the green will be the sensory input to respiratory centers of the medulla. Respiratory center, of course, I said in the in the brain stem. I meant in the medulla oblongata. And red will be the motor output to spinal center and respiratory muscles. So based on the sensation or the information we're collecting through the sensory input to the respiratory system in the medulla, the output of the motor output from the hypothalamus go that actually contact the respiratory muscles and the spinal center to regulate breathing, just in case you need to breathe more, etc. And this is some exercise you need to do. And